Good evening. This is Dale Wetzel. I'm the host of the Legislature Today radio show. We're coming at you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck. And it's a nice crowd in the bar and restaurant this evening. And if you're about and around in downtown Bismarck, or even if you're in your home anywhere in the vicinity, you might consider coming down. It's a good place to have a nice after-work drink, have a nice meal in a wonderful, historically interesting atmosphere. We're going to be speaking this hour with some gentlemen from the North Dakota Grain Growers Association. This hour of the Legislature Today is sponsored by the North Dakota Grain Growers Association. In a moment, we're going to be speaking with Mr. Brad Thickeson, who's the president of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association. He's a farmer from Portland, North Dakota, which is in the Red River Valley in east central North Dakota. We're also going to be speaking to Bob Wisness, who's the first vice president of the association. He farms near Watford City. First of all, let's update you on what's going on in the legislature, and I guess the most relevant thing at this point is that the legislature will not be meeting for the next several days. They reached what is called the crossover break today. The Senate had two bills to vote on this morning, relatively minor ones, frankly, and they spent a half an hour on the floor and then departed the Vale of Tears from about just after 9 a.m. on this morning, and the Senate will not be meeting on Friday or Monday or Tuesday, nor will the House. This is what's called the crossover break. The legislature will resume meeting on Wednesday morning. That is when committee hearings will resume, and House members will begin taking up bills that have been passed by the Senate, and the Senate will begin taking up bills passed by the House. And this is the second half of the legislature, or you could say the second third of it, the last third being conference committees, where differences between the House and Senate versions of bills are worked out, and we'll see how that goes. Today there were a number of significant bills approved in the House. One of them would provide an 8.5% credit against property taxes for all property owners in North Dakota, whether they are residential, commercial, or agricultural property owners. There was also the governor's education finance package, which includes a substantial increase in state school aid to local schools in North Dakota. The increase would be, it goes from $918 million over 2 years approximately to about $1.7 billion. And one of the elements of this bill is that this will require school districts to decrease their property tax rates. And the thought is that between the proposal to extend a credit against property taxes to property owners, and also to give schools money to reduce their property tax rates, that this could result in a decrease in the folks' property tax bills of up to 30% next year. The legislature is hoping that notice this impact and give them credit for it, because one of the elements of this package is that county treasurers are going to have to they're going to be required to list on property tax statements the amount of money that the legislature is providing to subsidize their property tax bills, in the hopes that folks that read these statements will think better of their legislators for doing this. We also had today the approval of the Department of Public Instruction's budget bill, which includes grants to local schools. That is a $2.1 billion spending plan over 2 years. We also had a bit of a embarrassing incident in the House. One of the House's new members, her name is Jessica Hake. She's a Democrat from Jamestown. At the opening of the House floor session this morning, she apologized for sending a tweet message yesterday that referred to the House Republican Majority Leader, Al Carlson, as a Nazi. She did not, during her speech, refer directly to what she was apologizing for, but everyone present knew what it was about, and Representative Carlson accepted the apology, and things move on. Just for a bit of context, legislators, when House floor sessions are going on, and House and Senate, in the House and Senate, this goes on, legislators communicate with each other during floor sessions by phone, by email, by instant message. They communicate with each other quite a bit. This was a tweet, though. It was sorry, sorry, I'm having my Marco Rubio moment here. This was visible as on a social network, and so that is the reason for the difficulty. Excuse me. Okay. I beg your pardon. We have on the telephone with us Mr. Brad Thickeson, the president of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association, and Mr. Bob Wisness, the first vice president of the Grain Growers Association. These gentlemen are both at a conference. Mr. Thickeson, tell us about this conference and where you are and what you're hoping to get accomplished here.
Well, good evening, Dale, and greetings from warm, sunny Florida. We're having to pull weight to the grain growers by having to go down to this forsaken country here where it's only about 80 degrees and sunshiny, but we're doing it for the cause of the North Dakota growers back home. So Bob and I are really pulling the heavy weight here. But
I'm sure they appreciate your sacrifice, sir.
No, we're having our annual meeting at the National Association of Wheat Growers. We've met 22 different states across the United States and discussing issues that are affecting the wheat industry today. We just concluded the National Association of Wheat Growers business meeting, and it is held in conjunction with the Commodity Classic that encompasses corn, soybeans, wheat, and sorghum. So it's quite an event and quite a melting pot of American ag right now in the Orlando, Florida area. So it's been kind of an interesting discussion, and we're learning and understanding what's happening in other parts of the United States and trying to come up with some common cause that we can keep promoting ag.
A Commodity Classic sounds like a golf tournament. Is there a golf tournament?
Not that I know of. There's some pretty nice green golf courses around, but the trouble is, they put us into these nice, warm, sunny areas, and then they put us in a suit and a tie, and then they put us in some air-conditioned meeting room, and we could do just as well the business back in Minneapolis or in some colder climate too. But of course, most of us want to extend the stay a little bit and take in the sights when they're here too. But during the meeting time, we very seldom see the bright sunshine of Florida. That's for sure.
Could you tell us what sort of issues you're talking about down there? What is on the minds of the wheat growers in the nation?
Well, front and center, I serve on the domestic policy committee, and I chaired it this last year, and I got to watch how sausage is made, or the lack of a farm bill, or the lack of making sausage. It's one of those deals where we didn't get things accomplished that we'd hoped, but we were kind of also realistic that the Congress isn't a very functional thing, it seems like, at D.C., and they aren't going to do anything until they get into that 11th hour. That was another topic of discussion that we had on our domestic policy, and I'll let Bob talk about his environmental issues. But with domestic policy, we tried to come up with some type of farm policy that would be a good blanket for all wheat states. The trouble with wheat, it's grown in the Pacific Northwest, it's grown in the Deep South, it's grown in the Midwest, and it's grown up in Ohio and the New York and in that area too. So we cover a lot of geographical area in the United States, and therefore it's really hard to come to a consensus on what was good for everybody. And we keep working on those things, and we involve Ag Senate staff, we involve House staff, and we try to communicate with those people what would be good for the ag sector and other commodity groups. And I'll let Bob talk about the environmental committee that he serves
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Wisnes.
I serve on the environmental committee, and we didn't have a lot of, nothing earth-shattering, I guess, this time. But we're always, dealing with, regulations that are pertinent to farmers, of course. Primarily, a lot of things concern the EPA and things that come through NRCS and such. So we have usually have a full plate. This meeting was a little uneventful in that aspect, however.
I would be interested, sir. I mean, would you think that an uneventful meeting when it comes to environmental regulation is a good thing?
Well, yeah, definitely. It seems like these things tend to come in bunches, and then all of a sudden we have a multitude of things to deal with. So it's a little quiet right now, and things coming out of Washington D.C. It seems like the farm, with the stalled out farm bill, it's also kind of a slow time for regulations and things that concern the environmental committee as well.
Mr. Thickeson, I'm interested in your explanation of the differences in, you mentioned how all of the places in the nation where wheat is grown, and what are the different interests of the wheat growers in the various parts of the country, and how do they differ from the interests of wheat growers in North Dakota?
Well, in 2012, the Senate Ag Committee came out with a shallow loss program written by Conrad, Baucus, and Hoven, and one other senator that escapes me right now. But anyway, they used a formula that if we went into either a price failure, or not failure, but deficiency or yield deficiency, that we would have some type of short supplemental coverage on top of maybe an insurance program or some type of loss protection in there into the farm bill. The Deep South, along with there on the House side of the ag version of the farm bill, they are more concerned about a target price system where the government will come in and set a target price that will, if we get into a price deficiency where the price erodes, that this target price will make up the difference between the marketplace and what the government has set. So those two things were the differences the first time around. What we're looking at now is that compromise has to happen. And if we're talking about farm policy, or if we're talking about health care, if we're talking about any issue in D.C., this compromise has to take place. And I think we've kind of come around that full circle. And I'm looking forward to, if we can get some momentum, that this compromise will get the next farm bill through the both chambers, the Senate and the House, and get onto the actual implementation of the new 2000, and now it'll be 2013 farm bill. We were talking 2012 here a year ago.
Do you have any sort of time frame in mind where this might happen?
Well, I think we've all watched how D.C. works. They wait till the 11th hour before they kick anything in gear. We've heard rumors that the Senate would like to maybe make a markup, and it sounds like they'll take the lead again. They did that the last time around, but that's yet to be seen. The sooner the better for the North Dakota producer and for the wheat producer in general, and corn and soybeans for anybody, that we can figure out what's going to happen in the next 5 years. It helps for the planning on everybody's individual farm. It gives us mechanics that we're going to have to deal with for the next near-by future. So with that, we'd sure like to see this thing sooner than later.
Mr. Wisnes, I understand that one of the concerns of the association in western North Dakota in particular is road dust and the effect on a field of being coated with dust. Could you talk to us about what's being done that you're aware of to try to ameliorate the road dust problem in western North Dakota?
Yeah, dust control over the past two or 3 years in the oil patch has been kind of a piecemeal approach. Homeowners, landowners and such have been able to cost share that with the county to put on chemicals and treatments and such that control the dust around their places, around the farmsteads primarily. So, so you'll have a half a mile of road or a quarter mile of road coated with dust or with the treatment. Holds the dust down fairly well in that particular area, but then you'll go several miles possibly with no dust treatment at all, and the end result is basically, depending on weather conditions, tremendous amounts of dust. And these roads are carrying hundreds of trucks a day, plus oil field pickups and every sort of traffic. So they're carrying 50 times the normal or more, the normal traffic load. So the dust is very invasive. It's not just affecting homes and farmsteads anymore. It's affecting fields where we have yield losses pretty well documented by farmers with their yield monitors on their combines and such. Ranchers are complaining about problems with cutting grass or hay that's not just totally covered with dust. So the cattle and livestock are eating this all this dust. It's creating a lot of problems, health problems for people and animals and crops and everything. So we're promoting a more of a widespread, comprehensive dust control plan on the worst of these roads.
And what are the elements of that plan, sir?
Well, it's primarily a state sponsored, in conjunction with counties and such, a state funded program to just get more of this dust control out on these roads. It's costly. It's running $5,000, $7,000, $8,000 a mile, and some of these roads have to be treated multiple times during a year. So the cost is high, and it's beyond what individuals, the farmers and ranchers, it's beyond what they can pay, and so this is coming through the legislature, and we're looking at some help from there, and I think it's probably going to happen to some extent anyway. So we're looking forward to that.
Mr. Thickeson, I understand that one of the concerns of the grain growers in the legislature as well is water management. And can you tell me how well the legislature is doing along those lines in addressing those concerns?
Yeah, I think on the North Dakota side, daily we're seeing a lot of, I think there's 2 or 3 House bills, or probably maybe even one in the Senate. I'm not sure where they're written, but we're dealing with the new interest in water management, especially in the eastern side of the state. Myself, I've been drain tiling since 2009 and running into some roadblocks when we deal with the NRCS or we're dealing with the government, and we're working through those things, and North Dakota legislatures are also helping to enhance this process of making it more of a educational tool to the public. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I'm a firm advocate that farmers are great innovators as far as what they can do in their land today using the technology that's available through the GPS system, through the yield monitors, the combine. Without those type of tools, none of this probably would have actually matured. But as we deal with high commodity prices and weather events that put 5 to 6 inches of rain on your field, or it saturates the groundwater so much that the crop can't survive, we have some abilities to go out there and manage that water. And we're no different than the urban person that actually went through the flood in Bismarck a few years ago that would have loved to manage the water from the Missouri in a little bit different way, or the person in Fargo, North Dakota that wants to make some diversion that goes around the city using a Red River diversion. Farmers just want to they don't want to add flooding problem. They just want to be able to manage the water in their field in a timely fashion. And those type of things will happen. It just takes some education when it comes to dealing with the people of North Dakota or the NRC haven't dealt with them before. And what we're really concerned on the grain growers is that we're going to get into this compliance of conservation programs with crop insurance. And I think we have a viable product in crop insurance today. We don't want to tweak or mess with that, and I think it's on the right path. This conservation issue can be solved with just good voluntary participation from farmers, and I think our state office at the NRCS level is right on board with that. And I'm personally really excited about Mary Podell. She's been great to work with, and I think we're on the right track. It's just taking some time to get there.
Gentlemen, how well do you think the legislature's done so far?
Well, I think on the North Dakota side, one thing I heard when we first started or convened is, there wasn't a lot of ag issues, and I think just what you alluded to earlier, Dale, when, EPA issues don't come front and center, that must mean things are going good, and I think right now in North Dakota, we are dealing with a good, strong ag sector. The thing is that we can't let this train, lose any steam either. We got to keep it moving, and we got to keep abreast. And I think the North Dakota legislature, from what I can tell, is right on board, and we've had a lot of our resolutions go through without any backlash. So that's my perception. I'll let Bob speak on his perception there.
Well, money solves a lot of problems. I mean, it creates some problems too. A lot of the legislatures will tell you that maybe this is one of the more difficult sessions because of the hard decisions they have to make. But it's better than the other way around.
Thank you for your time.
And being at the NOG meeting
excuse me, Mr. Wisnes. Yes. I'm sorry. We're running out of time here. We've been speaking to Mr. Brad Thickeson, who's the president of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association, and the gentleman who I just cut off, I'm sorry about that, is Mr. Bob Wisnes, the first vice president of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dale Wetzel. I'm the host of the Legislature Today radio program, and we are coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck. And this is the North Dakota Grain Growers Association sponsored hour. Earlier, we were speaking to Mr. Brad Thickeson, who's the president of the Grain Growers, and Mr. Bob Wisnes, who is a first vice president. In our second half hour of the show, we have on the phone Mr. Doyle Lentz, who is a director of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association and chairman of the North Dakota Barley Council. And Mr. Lentz is also a member of the State Board of Research and Education, which is a quite important advisory board that helps to set research priorities for North Dakota State University's agricultural research program. Welcome, Mr. Lentz.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks for having us.
What I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Lentz, is could you tell us about how policy is made in terms of deciding what research priorities should be pursued at North Dakota State University and the role of the State Board of Research and Education in that process?
Okay, Dale. Well, I'll kind of start. I'll go from the beginning. The State Board of Ag Research and Extension is a group of people that the legislature decided a number of years ago to pick, where you have 5 from Extension and 5 from Ag Coalition, along with the different schools at NDSU. And what we do, we start by basically having hearings all over the state. And people come to us, ag producers come to us with their ideas and what they should be what they think is important to them in North Dakota agriculture. Then through a series of meetings and screenings and polling, we break down and prioritize these things. The large group does to what we think is most important, and then we rank them for the legislature and what we think is the most important things from the highest priority to the lowest, and then of course the legislature then does what they see fit. So we kind of are a group that does the homework for the legislature.
And how has the process worked in terms of the legislature going along with with the priorities that you set for research?
Well, historically, Dale, it's gone pretty well. Where our major priorities have always been well received by the legislature. We're kind of we're a group of farmers that we know what's pretty important to us, and we're willing to, add our own money to it as well. We usually get commodity groups involved. We get all of our partners involved in this, along with the college and the legislature, and we've been quite successful. And of course, it takes time sometimes when your thing comes up. We have to kind of got to work its way through the mill, if you will, so that these things become a priority down the road later.
Could you talk about some of the research successes of which you're aware that the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education has supported?
Well, I think the most recent and the most obvious one, Dale, would be the wonderful new greenhouse facility we have on the campus of NDSU. It's truly a state-of-the-art facility that, it's the envy of even the commercial agriculture. It's just a beautiful facility, state-of-the-art, and it's one that every producer we've ever taken to it is just very proud that, that their investment in agriculture in North Dakota is a part of that. And as you go to the experiment stations all across the state of North Dakota, you can see through the years the things that have been important to the producers of North Dakota that we've got through SBARE and through the legislature, and that the good citizens of North Dakota see fit to participate in.
Could you explain a bit the importance of a greenhouse? Because personally, when I think of a greenhouse, I think of a place where you grow flowers. I really don't think of a place where agricultural research is done. What is the significance of having a good indoor facility in order to conduct agricultural crop research?
Well, the thing about that is it's so important for us to have that nice research facility because it allows us to go year-round and do the research that we need to have done more than just in the summertime. It allows us to move our research and our new crop varieties ahead in a much quicker pace and a much more controlled pace, and it really allows the producers to get those necessary varieties out there so much sooner than we had to rely on either non-controlled or old greenhouses or just relying on Mother Nature in the summer months.
What are some of the projects that are going on there of which you're aware?
Well, mostly it's just an extension of the projects we had going before, but what it does, it allows them to have much more climate control, much more efficient, and it's also allowed us to probably do more of the higher technology type things in a much more controlled atmosphere. As we move into the new facility they're building now, and I think Ken Grafton will correct me, I think it's a level 3, this allows us to do the type of research that's only being able to be done in a couple of different places in the United States. This is truly a state-of-the-art, high-tech facility that only a couple of places in the whole country are able to do this type of research that we're going to be able to do right on the campus of NDSU.
Mr. Lentz, what is your level of satisfaction with the legislature so far in terms of its support for agricultural research and extension?
Well, traditionally through the years, Dale, the legislature has been very good to us. There's going to be a few things every year that they see differently that they think is maybe something that they want to support where we maybe didn't rank it quite as high. But by and large, through the years, we've had a very good relationship with the legislature. What we're seeing again this year so far, it looks pretty good. We got our priority list, and for us, I guess it's just a question of that they're gonna fund what they see fit. But our job is to prioritize them and then try to tell them the reasons why we did that.
What is the significance of agricultural research to the bottom line of the farmer who benefits from it?
Well, I'm familiar with barley, Dale. That's my crop.
Let's talk about barley. That's a good subject because barley's used to make beer, of course, and that's a favorite beverage of a number of folks.
We like to say, Dale, wheat feeds you, but barley keeps everybody happy. So,
exactly.
I'll use barley as an example. It's not very hard for our researchers in the newer varieties to get, say 2 bushels an acre. Well, 2 bushels an acre over the million acres, which is a small crop in North Dakota barley, that's 2 million bushels of extra barley. At $5 a bushel, that's $10 million. And if you do the economic, where you multiply it, the economic multiplier, it's huge to our state.
And what sort of research has been done recently that benefits barley production? Oh,
I think we lost the caller. Yeah, he's gone. We're going to try to reconnect here real quick.
Okay. Should I just... I'm sorry. We lost Mr. Doyle Lentz. He's the director of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association. When I say we lost him, he's no longer on the phone with us. He is the chairman of the North Dakota Barley Council and member of the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education. What the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education does is it sets priorities for research at the North Dakota State University Experiment Station and Research Center. And their recommendations are rather elaborately crafted. They involve a number of meetings around the state with interested producers where they have basically a to and fro about which research priority is the most important and the most financially significant to North Dakota producers. And these recommendations are presented to the North Dakota Legislature, which goes through them and decides which ones are worth financial support. And the recommendations of the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education are enormously influential in determining the research priorities of North Dakota State University. It's a system that's been in existence for a number of years. In fact, the current North Dakota governor, Jack Dalrymple, when he was a state legislator and a farmer from Castleton, was one of the people who was instrumental in forming the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education. And it's been a system that's been working quite well. Mr. Lentz, I believe we lost you for a moment. I'm sorry about that.
Not there.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We still don't have him.
I'm here.
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. I'm quite relieved. Okay. We were talking about, sir, what sort of projects have been significant to the barley industry, research projects recently?
Well, what we were talking about, of course, is the significance and the varieties that they've bred for us, which are much more disease resistant, especially more tolerant to scab, which allows us, of course, to market our barley for malting instead of feed, which adds significant dollar amounts to the producers in North Dakota. To give you an example, Dale, this year 90% of the barley in North Dakota was at the malt quality level they needed, where traditionally we're at about 60%. Now, granted, it was a drier year, but still the varieties have came a long ways and put a lot of dollars back into the North Dakota barley producers' pocket.
Is barley what are the growth trends in terms of barley production? So are people producing more barley or more acres going to barley, or is it what are the trends?
Well, barley is pretty much a specialty crop, Dale. It's kind of got to the point where a lot of the acres in North Dakota are contracted, and actually the producers in North Dakota kind of like that. They know what they're going to get, an act of God contract, so if something goes wrong, they're not responsible for delivering the bushels. So, we think North Dakota barley is going to kind of stay at that 800,000 to 1.2 million range, unless the malt industry gives us indication that we need to grow more. But that's kind of where we think we're at right now, and I think most of the producers are pretty satisfied with the commodity as a whole.
Could you please explain the difference for folks that aren't that familiar with farming between malting barley and malting barley and feed barley?
Okay, malt barley is basically what they use to make beer. That's the primary thing. There's a couple of minor products they make with it, your baby cereals and probably your malted milk balls, things like that. That's what malt is used for, and it's a much higher value crop than the feed. And, of course, the feed is pretty much self-explanatory. It's used for livestock, whether it be beef cattle or hogs or the dairy business. The other thing that's becoming a bigger factor all the time is the pet food industry. And the pet food industry actually requires a quality spec very much similar to the malt.
How much more difficult is it, sir, to grow malting barley versus barley for feed?
Well, it takes more management. As a rule, you're going to have to do some things a little bit differently. You'll have to watch your nitrogen management a little bit closer so your protein levels don't get too high. You're also going to have to probably make sure you use a fungicide to keep all of the other diseases away that the breeding doesn't fix. And you're probably going to make sure that it doesn't get much rain on it. You're going to want to manage it a little bit better at harvest.
Is crop disease a significant problem for barley growers, sir?
Oh yeah, it's the limiting factor. It's part of the reason you're seeing so many corn and soybean acres in North Dakota. And of course, all of these things I'm talking about with barley are pretty much related back to wheat as well. You know, they're the grass crops that suffered the most from the wet cycle we were in North Dakota.
And what kind of diseases are we talking about, sir? What do they do to the crop?
Well, of course, scab was the biggest one, and that's the one that just ruined the quality of the crop. It introduced toxins into the barley that you couldn't make beer with, and in the wheat, it also used these same type of toxins. That really brought up suspect quality things, and it was very hard to make the quality flour that we've been used to. So, you know, too much rain at the wrong times in particular just caused a lot of problems.
Aside from barley, sir, we were talking earlier about significant research that's being done at NDSU that benefits farmers and consumers. Could you tell us a bit about projects of which you're aware that affect crops other than barley that you thought were particularly significant in terms of helping farmers produce more, or a better quality crop, or a safe crop, whatever description you want to use?
Well, I think if you look across the state, I think you can pick just about any commodity, and NDSU is trying to improve the quality, to improve the production characteristics. They're doing it with just about all the crops, Dale. It'd be really hard to pick out one. I think wheat would be a good example with some of the varieties they've released. They literally put wheat back on and make it possible for us guys in the northeast part of the state to grow wheat again. We were having a hard time, and with their breeding, they came along with ways to really limit the scab, and that made the potential for us to grow wheat back. And I couldn't even fathom how many dollars in return they got out of that research. And of course, as we talk about those things, they do a lot of research into the crops that the corn, the soybeans, canola, sugar beets, potatoes, and I could go on. If it's a crop grown in North Dakota, they're working on it.
What sort of challenges do you face, sir, as a barley grower, trying to grow a cereal crop in North Dakota's northern climate?
Well, of course, barley, is very acclimated to that northern climate. It's very good for that. The challenges, of course, we have are to have the consistent quality, and we've learned more through ag research that there are ways to do that. I mentioned earlier the fungicides. These are things that were not used a whole lot 20 years ago, and now they've become commonplace. And with these type of things, and from the people doing the research at NDSU, it's allowed us to do these things. And the nice thing about it, Dale, is they're the ones that are working on it 24/7, and it allows us to get on with our farming operation and truly utilize and benefit from the things that they've done in their ag research.
You mentioned earlier that, if I understood you correctly, that most barley is grown on contract. Contract with whom?
Well, your major malting and brewing companies do most of the contracting. The names that would be familiar with a lot of people around here would be your InBev, which would be Anheuser-Busch, Rahr Malting, which is a malting family out of Minnesota, Cargill Malt at Spiritwood, the large facility you see along the interstate there. That's Cargill Malt, who are worldwide, and there's a couple of other smaller players involved. And these people actually go out into the countryside and work with local elevators or their own elevators, and they offer contracts generally in the fall. And the farmers, wait for a price, which they post every day, and when they see fit, they contract.
Can you describe, sir, the malting process? What is the purpose of it?
Well, the malting process, first of all, I need to tell you that malt barley is truly the only commodity that you have to keep in a living form. It's literally alive in that bin, because it has to be alive in order to germinate. And real basic on the malting process is when they bring your barley in, they wet the barley down in these malt beds. You get a sprout growing on it, and then they dry it down very quickly after the sprout is on there. And then, of course, they roast it. And with the roasting of that barley, to the different temperatures of roasting and whatnot, it'll dictate the color that they roast it to for your light beers and dark beers, and etc. And that's a very, very quick overview of how the malt process is done. It's quite complicated, but that's kind of the degree of it.
You mentioned earlier that the legislature this year, hasn't exactly been heavy on ag issues. Do you see, some issues perhaps in the future that that the legislature might be taking up that you can see coming down the pike in the future?
Well, I think, of course, the challenge for North Dakota is going to be like a lot of our neighboring states. As the population shift continues to become urban, we're going to have to keep telling our story and the significance and the importance of what we do. And so far, in North Dakota, it hasn't been that hard, but we want to make sure that we stay on top of this and ahead of the game.
I'm interested that you raised that subject, sir, because, some of the questions I've been asking you are, fairly basic. I'm making the assumption that many of our listeners have only a very rudimentary knowledge of agriculture. And I'm wondering if that is something that you take into account now, perhaps more than you would have in the past, that you might be making the assumption that folks have very little knowledge of agriculture, and you need to explain to them what you do in a way that you might not have had to in the past because folks would have just known it.
Well, in this day and age, Dale, we go with the assumption that you don't that you know very little about it, and we want to make sure that we do a good job of explaining it to them. And it helps us in our day-to-day business, like any business, to make sure that you're customer aware. And we want to be customer aware so that we can do the things that we're responsible to do, and it also helps us to defend what we do, and we can explain to them that their tax dollars are going to good use and they're getting a good positive return on what they do to give them safe and reliable food.
Sir, I'm sure that the issue of property taxes is quite important to yourself and the folks that you represent. What is your opinion of how well the legislature has approached the problem of rising property taxes and their attempts to either stem the growth or reverse the trend of rising property taxes?
Well, I think there's been some concern, Dale. Obviously, with the referendum and everything that went by this past summer, I think it resonated quite loudly with our legislature, and it appears there's a lot of legislation that's been proposed. I'm not quite sure, I guess, right now where this is all going to shake out, but there is a concern out there in the countryside that they've tried to reduce these taxes, but then on the same hand, pass several mandates back to our local counties, so our net results are not lower property taxes.
In your opinion, sir, the ballot measure that was rejected last year to abolish property taxes, why, in your opinion, was it rejected?
Well, I think it was just going too far, Dale, in my view, I guess. We want to be responsible, citizens as well in the state of North Dakota by just eliminating that. I think it just was too much. I think there's too many people that just thought that they didn't know what was going to happen. It was too many questions there. I think it just went too far, but I do think it sent the message.
One of the things that you hear in the legislature, sir, quite frequently is that the legislators, this is an opinion often expressed by legislators, they say, well, it's true that the measure to abolish property taxes did fail, and did fail quite substantially, but it wasn't because people like property taxes. It's because they were concerned about the details of this particular idea, and if the legislature doesn't get on the stick and try to reform property taxes and inhibit their growth or reverse it, that we're going to see another measure that might as well pass. Is that a sentiment that you hear, and what are your opinions on it?
I don't know if that's something I've been hearing, but I think a lot of people are paying more attention this year to what the legislature is looking at as far as property tax relief. I think the people in North Dakota by and far are fair about this. I think they want to make sure that they give them an opportunity to try to lower them. But that said, I think if something doesn't happen, they probably will come back with something.
Mr. Lenz, can you tell us a bit about your own operation?
Well, I farm up in the Raleigh area, north central North Dakota. I farm with my father, and we have a couple of hired men, and we grow wheat, barley, canola, and soybean. And we've been up there for over 100 years, I guess, and we kind of we kind of refer to it the tundra. We're not at the end of the world, but you can see us from there.
How long have you been active in the barley growers?
I've been in the grain growers for about it's one of those things. If I tell you 15, it's probably been 20 or so, but quite a number of years.
We've been speaking this evening to Mr. Doyle Lentz. He's a director of the North Dakota Grain Growers Association and the chairman of the North Dakota Barley Council, which produces the crop that makes beer possible. So we're certainly grateful to him and other barley farmers for that aspect. Mr. Lentz is also a member of the State Board of Agricultural Research and Education, which helps to set the budget or the research priorities for North Dakota State University in terms of what the university spends its time and money on in researching various crop agricultural issues. Mr. Lentz, thank you for your time, and we're grateful that you agreed to come on the air with us this evening.
Well, thank you, Dale. I appreciate you letting me share my time.
Take care, sir.